and welcome to the New York Artist Collective podcast, This Next One's About. This is the podcast where we ask artists to give us an inside look at one of their songs, the stories behind it, and how it became the track that we're going to hear today. My name is Stephanie Manns, and today's guest is singer-songwriter Akie Bermiss. Akie is a Brooklyn-born and raised jazz musician, singer-songwriter, composer, and self-confessed science fiction fan. Akie, thank you so much for joining us on This Next One's About. It's a pleasure to have you. Welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I had quite a lot of fun this afternoon looking at your website and reading your bio. I loved it.
Yes.
I just, I think it's so interesting how, we describe ourselves and what you put down. And I just loved it. And this sounds weird. I thought it made you sound really fun. And I really wanted to have this chat with you. What I loved, just to quote a little bit, to his friends, he is considered a musical snob of the highest order. To his enemies, a musical charlatan of the basest variety.
Yes, well, you touched upon probably the one of the few sentences that I actually wrote. Because I had an interview and talked, but I had my own bio, and this was that's one of 4 sentences. They were like, "This is good enough to keep."
Oh, awesome. Well, I loved it. I thought it was really cool. And by the way, on your bio, you said you're a lover of science fiction and fantasy novels and a huge fan of cigars.
That is true. Both things are true.
Well, I'm also a lover of science fiction, and I also love cigars.
Oh, yes?
Yeah.
Get out of town.
No, absolutely. I love cigars.
Wow.
I'd love it if you'd have a cigar with me after the show.
That would be fantastic. I'd be delighted. Yes, absolutely. Let's
talk about your song. So This Next One's About is where we get a bit more of a chance to go a little more in depth on a song of yours, as you might do, at a show. But for instance, at a show, you might not get the chance to go into as much detail with it. So the song is called Space and Time.
Mm-hmm.
And you said taken from an album called Alien Love Songs.
Yes, a forthcoming, long in the works album called Alien Love Songs. Yes.
So what was the idea behind that?
Oh, well, there's a science fiction element. Some years ago, almost a decade or more, had this idea to do almost a narrative soul opera of sorts about an alien that sort of is stranded on Earth and falls in love with a human, and they sing songs back and forth, and you sort of get to understand how their relationship is awkward, and then they sort of resolve things, and it has interstellar ramifications and so on and so forth. So that became the Alien Love Songs. Yeah. So
and when is this coming out?
Oh God, no one knows. Presently there are 4 reels of 2-inch tape underneath my bed with the full album on them. It turned. What happened was it kind of became a runaway project, and it went from about 10 songs as an idea to, I think in the end it's about 24 songs.
Oh wow!
So yeah, now I have to contend with. Doing it in parts as a trilogy, or do I release this 2-hour epic? I don't know what to call it.
Well, for fans of science fiction, I'm sure they would prefer the big epic.
That's my thinking. So I just need to find a commercial way to sell people on that. But I'm aiming for science fiction music, the Venn diagram of the overlap of those two things.
Awesome. Okay, well, Akie Bermiss, this is Space and Time.
Space and Time. Take 3.
river, baby, let me show you. Running from the planets to a sea of stars. 22 and 7 leave the circle open, overflowing space. Space and time. Beauty is a mirror, baby, let me show you. You can only see it from the other side. Oh, through with the illusion, maybe I was broken. I was only lonely and I should have died. Then I held on. I held on. What's the plan, girl? Figure it out. Love's the answer. I just keep turning it down. I held on. Every time I reach for you for something holy. Shape to give the stretching shadows in my mind. You were always out there just beyond the boundary, sailing through a wine dark sky. Never had a chance to let somebody know me. Gave away the music in this heart of mine. Always bitter, always angry, almost empty. And I should kick the habit, but it's hard sometimes. Then I held on. I held on. What's the plan, girl? Figure it out. Love's the answer. I just keep turning it down. I held on. Something mine holds me down like gravity. All this space and time, don't know where I have to be. Something in my mind. I held on. I held on. I held on. What's the plan, girl? Figure it out. Love's the answer. I just keep turning it down. I held on.
So that was Space and Time. Akie, it's super cool. It's very ethereal, very spacey. I'm definitely getting the alien
Yes.
love song from it.
That was the vibe.
That was the vibe. It's super cool. So So tell me, what have you been up to this summer? I know that you've been very busy touring with Lake Street Dive.
Yes, that's been almost my entire year. We've been uh, out pushing that new record, Free Yourself Up, and so since about April, I've been on and off the road, like a month out and then 2 weeks home, and a month out and 3 weeks home. But apart from that, I'm kind of being an introvert in Brooklyn and writing yet more songs. Though I haven't yet released the Alien Love song Opus. But, I'm kind of having a fun time doing that, just being super creative.
And how do you, obviously you are super, an incredibly creative musician, and you have your fingers in a lot of pies, and you play for a lot of people as well as doing your own stuff. How do you find that balance of doing your own stuff and being a musician for hire?
I'm not sure that if there is anything I would call balance, it's definitely a dynamic sort of balance, which is really like a teetering in one way or the other and trying not to completely collapse. But it's a lot of learning a lot of people's songs and doing a lot of co-writing and losing a lot of sleep. And but I find that doing diverse projects informs my own writing and my own music. So I like to think that all that frenzied activity leads to better original music when I'm trying to write.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I actually also didn't realize that you're playing with you're doing a show with the NYAC on the 21st of October, and I didn't realize that you had worked with Ali before. Ali Carter.
Yes, for several years we worked very regularly, doing her original music and also like very strange jazz gigs. And I'm not sure what she's doing at the show, but we might hear a song or two that I co-wrote with her, which would be exciting.
Oh, that is exciting. So I mean, I know from reading about you and listening to your stuff, you're very multi-talented and cross-genre. And I know that you spend a lot of time doing jazz, and the Lake Street Dive stuff it's yes. Such a fusion of stuff. Is jazz kind of where your heart's at? Do you enjoy going into other genres?
Oh, that's a good question. I love jazz, and if I guess there's like an intellectual / nerdiness about jazz that I found compatible with my my innate nerdiness that was already sort of ingrown, and so that was sort of my inroads into music. And then I sort of expanded to what let's say quote unquote cooler or more modern or hip or trendy genres from that. But I feel like especially for a piano player, the jazz with its like its advanced sort of harmonic sense is a great way to basically just get into any kind of music. And so I found myself listening to like rock and classical, and I wound up studying music in college and sort of doing all that like Stravinsky and Berg and like 12-tone music, and then also avant-garde music and Pink Floyd and basically everything everywhere, and I kind of sucked it all up. So
So funny. I think I've always found with jazz players, and I play some more country kind of music, but I've always found jazz players are so well versed in everything, and they're very adaptable to everything. And I've I think sometimes I've worked with some, like if I've had some violin on a record, if they've been much more classical, they've really kind of struggled to be creative about it, because I think they've kind of spent a lot of time learning and less time creating. And I feel like with jazz players, they just know where you want to go, and they go off in kind of different directions, completely unprompted, and it's always great. But it's definitely kind of it's a discipline I've never managed myself, but I hugely admire it.
Yeah, I think it's sort of it's like the discipline of being open to being sort of free to go wherever you want to go. So it's in some ways it's a nice way to start, because it's very informative and a bit uh, uh, academically rigid, like the learning how the harmony works and the rules of like improvisation are useful as a grounding place. And then you kind of, when you get introduced to like R&B or country or pop music, you have this context to go like, oh, it's using this sort of part of the language that I sort of think they're all under that same umbrella, or blues or anything like that.
And how do you find being an artist in New York? I mean, I don't know about you, but I spend a lot of my time getting so much more kind of knowledge about it and what New York used to be like, what it was like in the 60s, you know, all of the music that has grown up here, and how it sort of shaped New York, and how, you know, the artist community shaped New York, and it was all here. And now there's this sort of argument that, you know, artists are priced out of New York, and whether it's the right place for music to kind of grow, whether it's the right environment.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess I'm ambivalent about that. I feel like on the one hand, New York still is sort of a focus point for people who want to do artistic things. So I think a lot of people still want to come here when they're ready to, you know, put their music out there, put their art out there. On the other hand, yeah, New York is very much changed. Even so I grew up here. I was born and raised in Brooklyn. It's changed even since I was here in like high school, and it is more expensive to live here, so making it more difficult for artists who typically are not getting paid like, you know, ridiculous sums of money. We're not like bankers or anything like that. So it's become a bit more hard scrabble and a bit less practical to find places to live, and therefore, yeah, I think it becomes difficult for music to grow. But that's part of that. Kind of brings us back to one of the earlier questions you asked about like playing a lot of people's music and doing a lot of things. That was really the only way to financially, you know, to eat for me. So I tried to find a way to make that, for lack of a better word, synergistic with my creative endeavors. So I was like, well, listen, if I have to play in 47 bands to, you know, eke out a living, then I'll try to find the best or most interesting or most creative bands in each of these things that you got to do. And if I have to teach, then I'll try to find the coolest place to teach where I have the most interesting kind of range of students, and just try to keep growing as an artist. And at the risk of soapboxing here, I also feel like it's important for artists to, and this is my opinion, to be part of their community locally. And I think it's good to have part of if your one prong is like, I'm writing songs and I want everyone to hear them, it's good to have another prong that's like, how can I be of service? How can I, you know, contribute to the life of, you know, the city or the neighborhood I live in? So I thought, you know, teaching is important. Like, you get to work with younger kids and they're all going to school and they're growing up, and you know, I feel like that's an important part of being an artist. And so I didn't shy away from that for a long time. I just kind of did everything I could and tried to, you know, while being focused on the ethereal or the esoteric, to also be very focused on like the visceral, the local element of being an artist in the city. It's part of I think, the mantle of art.
One final thing, I just wanted to ask, you wrote a children's book.
I did. Oh my. Is that in the bio?
It is in the bio.
Okay. Yes. I forget what's been taken out and what's left in. I love that that's in there. I think it's a kind of an interesting thing for people to know. Yeah.
It is. What's it about?
It's called I Hate to Be Sick. And surprise, surprise, it's about a young boy who wakes up sick and can't go to school and has to spend the day at home. And his journey towards acceptance of that staying at home is can be fun, even if he misses going to school that day. And that's like a very heady way of describing this children's book.
I would have thought that would be the child's fantasy.
Yes. Well, right. That I guess I could have pitched that idea like, hey, he wakes up sick and he's like, yes, no more school ever. But I guess we wanted to go for a more even-keeled sort of approach. I mean, no one wants to be sick. Everyone hates to be sick. I think it's universally, you want to be healthy, even if that means you have to go to school.
Good point. Well made. Final question. Final question. Favorite and least favorite thing about living in New York?
Ooh, favorite and least favorite thing. Well, okay, this works. My least favorite thing is probably how overcrowded it is, or like sometimes how commercial it feels. Certain parts of it, like there's no like real character to certain parts of the city, and that can feel alienating to the artist. It feels like everything is empty, But then the plus side is that because there's so many people, there's so many options. The cities, there's like things are 24 hours. There's so many like nooks and crannies of places to go to. I have a lot of like favorite like coffee shops and bookstores that are off the beaten path that are little havens for me and my my mod squad of artsy fartsy friends. And I think that's really that's the idyllic New York musician lifestyle, is to sit at a cafe for 6 hours drinking espresso and pretending to be erudite,
getting the
but
shakes,
really,
probably.
Yeah, getting the shakes and talking about Game of Thrones, but then being like, man, we really have such heady conversations. Whoa.
Yes, love Game of Thrones. Great answer. So, Akie, where can we find your music if someone wants to go and buy some of it or come and see you? Where should they go?
So, if people want to hear my music, the best way to do it is to hear it live, I would say. And to do that, you would go to akiebermissmusic.com and see where I'm playing. I'm doing a lot of stuff with Lake Street Dive, but I also do a lot of stuff solo or with my band whenever I get the chance. And there's some music up on Amazon. Amazon and Apple and Spotify and all the platforms of streaming and downloading, all under Akie Bermiss.
All of the things. Well, Akie,
Yes.
It's been such a pleasure chatting to you.
Likewise.
I can't wait to meet you and see you perform on the 21st.
Yes, I'm delighted. Thank you for inviting.
And have a cigar.
Oh, yes, we are going to have a cigar. I'll bring one.
Akie Bermiss, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Akie Bermiss, and apparently my new smoking buddy. Join us again next week, and I'll be chatting to Kaylin Marie, our third and final artist for the October 21st show at Rockwood Music Hall. You can get your tickets from NewYorkArtistCollective.com. And if you haven't already followed us, go check us out on Instagram. We are at NewYorkArtistCollective.com. See you next time.